Grab some coffee, a Mountain Dew, maybe both. A storm is brewing. The Brainstorm. Welcome to The Brainstorm with Matt and Mike.
Hey, welcome to The Brainstorm. I'm your host, Mike White. My host, Matt Thompson, is out of the studio today. So I've got the man, the myth, the legend, Freddie Marchant joining me today. Welcome aboard here, Freddie.
Pressure.
No pressure.
No pressure, Mike. Yeah, today we're talking about a topic that kind of impacts everybody, whether you realize it or not, right? So it gives us an opportunity to get to know ourselves and to test our strength and really kind of teach us. And that's dealing with adversity.
Yeah, well, that's the truth, Freddie. We all face it.
Yep.
It's inevitable. The thing about it is there's a statement that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Yep.
Well, when it comes to adversity, we don't really have a choice. I mean, it shows up when it's ready, and whether you're ready or not. And so the student's not always ready, but you better be ready to take it on and deal with it in some way, because it's either going to crush you or it's going to help you grow.
That's right. That's exactly right.
It's and that's a choice we make. It's either going to break us or it's going to make us. Mm-hmm. Dale Carnegie famously said, that some of the most important things that have been accomplished in the world were accomplished by people who kept trying when there seemed to be no hope at all. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's just such a powerful statement.
It is.
And that's really speaks to how we need to address adversity and challenges when we're faced with them in life. We're going to have them in business. We're going to have them in our personal life. Some of us seem to have them more often than others. Mm-hmm. And, the reality is some people really grow from them.
That's right.
And so, Freddie, why don't you introduce our guest today?
Yeah, so our guest today is no stranger to adversity, from the baseball diamond to the coach's box to the boardroom. So today we have Calvin Beeman with us today. So thanks for joining us, Calvin.
Thanks for having me, Freddie and Mike. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man.
Definitely.
Thanks for being here. We really appreciate
Excited.
it. Yep. Tell us a little bit about your kind of background, Calvin. Why don't you just kind of break some of that down for us?
Sure. So I consider myself a former athlete, a has-been, if you will, but baseball has been my vessel the majority of my life. I grew up in Denver, Colorado, playing multiple sports, anything from karate to football to wrestling. But baseball is what really stuck. And I think one of the reasons it did is because of the challenge to overcome adversity.
Right.
There's the saying, if you go 0 for 10 in baseball, it's bad, but if you go 3 for 10, you can be an all-star. And I think that that's something that really stuck with me throughout my life. But growing up in Denver, again, being able to do multiple things really afforded me the opportunities to have some great experiences. But from there, it took me to a lot of different places, and baseball, again, was that vessel. But outside of athletics, I'm a family man, I'm a coach, I'm a mentor by nature. That's something that I enjoy doing every single day of my life, whether it's with my children or with those clients that I work with and for. So at the end of the day, I'm just someone who loves to help people. I love connecting good people with good people, and I've really found myself to be invested in this community here in Cola, and look forward continuing to see how I can do that more and more down the line.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome.
So where are you at now as far as work goes?
Sure. So I work for McGriff Insurance, which is a subsidiary of Truist Bank. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people around the Southeast would familiarize with BB&T. Well, BB&T merged with SunTrust back in December of 2019. Right. And McGriff, has always been the insurance arm of BB&T, which is now Truist. So I work on the employee benefit side of the house. That being said, we're a full-service insurance firm. We're the 5th largest in the nation, and that's something that we take a lot of pride in. But the resources from Truist allow for us to bring a lot of different value as well as resources to the clients that we work with.
Right. Okay. And so what's your main focus there?
My main focus for what I do every day is health insurance for small to mid to large size businesses here in the Columbia market as well as nationally. So I work with employers who are looking to attract and retain, build culture that's residual, and we're seeing that's being one of the most important factors coming off of this COVID, or as we move forward in COVID, is how are we going to attract this top talent? But more importantly, with places like this and businesses like Splash Omni Media, how are we going to retain that talent?
Right.
And I think that all encompasses building a culture that makes your employees feel like you care about them, but also have their best interests at hand and are helping educate them on what resources are available to them that you supply or provide as an employer. So I enjoy working with teams, winning cultures, and finding like-minded individuals that want to incorporate that into health insurance, if you can imagine. So I like to say it in a different way because insurance is insurance, and I think that there's some special things that can be done with that. That being said, it takes the right mindsets to really implement it in a way that I think is effective.
Yes, so, go ahead.
So how did you kind of, if we were to rewind a little bit and talk about, your genesis from with baseball and kind of where baseball took you, and then how that transition happened and all of that. So talk a little bit about your baseball kind of career.
Yeah, so long story short, or short story long, which I'm a lot better at, right? Baseball, again, was a vessel that took me some great places. I've been fortunate to be a part of many winning cultures on a national championship level, but it started in high school, and I went to Smoky Hill High School. We were state champions. That led to me being drafted by the Pirates in the 26th round out of high school, and back then they did something called a draft and follow. So you would go to junior college for a year or two and sign your rights away to that team that drafted you in that mid to lower round, and try and convince them to give you that shiny signing bonus that would change your life. So I went to Las Vegas to a junior college called Southern Nevada, which was about 3 years old when I arrived, and a legendary coach in that area named Tim Chambers had taken over the program, was really bringing it back to life, and we had a group of blue-collar guys with a blue-collar coach who believed in us and told us that we were going to win the national championship from day one, and that cultivated into us doing so and being a dark horse, if you will, at the junior college national championship that year. So that afforded some great opportunities for all of us, and I was fortunate enough to be drafted again by the Cardinals. I turned down decent money from the Pirates, but my father always was pushing getting a college education just from his athletic days. So I decided to go to my dream school, the University of Texas, and was the #1 junior college prospect coming out of that junior college experience. So had a little bit of hype, and probably had a little bit of hype in my head too. But going to a place like Texas, you're humbled very quickly. And I think being in any great culture, you want to surround yourself with people who are better than you are, or can take your job any time of the season, if you will. So I went to Texas and had a great experience, and ended up playing in the College World Series that year. We ended up winning a national championship, beating Florida. And there's nothing that can describe, dogpiling in Omaha. There's nothing that can describe that, but the overall experience was amazing. And it also turned into a life-changing experience for me, because I met my children's mother, and we had our first child my junior year there at Texas. So that also culminated with parents going through divorce, and really the first time life hit me in the mouth is how I put it to a lot of my friends and coworkers. And it really was the first time I had to have a looking up view, if you will, and decide if I was going to get back up. So I decided to get back up and had the opportunity to go to UNLV and continue my career there while being a father and while figuring out how to work and do all things encompassing. So transferred to UNLV, had a great experience. It was I won't say it was a fall far from grace, if you will, but the resources were different. And it was a little bit of a grittier feel than being in the shiny lights of Austin, Texas, and with the Longhorns and all the resources that are provided to national championship teams. So, so that was a growing experience in itself, but I'll never forget the one moment in my life that changed everything for me, and that was when I had to go and beg for a bagging job at a local grocery store called Smith's. And I'll never forget, I had to go in more than once because athletes' schedules don't usually align with sport. So either way, finally got the job, and from there, by the time I was done, I was managing the front end, and it was a great experience, and have some more to it.
That's awesome.
After obtaining that job and being able to work the front end, I was able to balance school, playing baseball in college, being a college athlete, being a father, #1. And that really was the year that grew me up, and it's also the year that probably did some of this to me, even though bald is beautiful, brother.
It is.
And, it is. And,
trying to get Freddie to buy in on that.
Yeah, he's still got some years ahead.
I noticed I got put in the middle today.
Man.
He's hanging on to it for sure. So the silver fox over here. But either way, when I was done with playing at UNLV, I had an even, bigger blessing in being able to continue my dream of playing minor league baseball or professional baseball. So I was drafted by the Seattle Mariners, signed with them in my senior year, and then went and played a couple of years in the Midwest League. And that was another transition, if you will. You think you don't have resources at UNLV, and then you go to minor league baseball and you're on buses that are breaking down and doubled up. And we had 5 guys to a 2-bedroom apartment. So my roommate, Gavin Dickey, who was a 2-sport athlete at Florida, quarterback and played outfield. I mean, we would kick each other in the ankles at night, while we were trying to sleep, getting ready for the game. And you're learning how to make food for yourself and all those things. So it's an experience in itself, and one that I'll never forget. But it was another layer of grit that was developed through that, because, there's some pains there as well when you're a father and being away from family. So it was time to put my big boy pants on, and I saw myself in the mirror as, hey man, you're probably past the time of being able to really make it here. Not that that's a failure, but more so you have a priority and you have a responsibility at home. So came back home. We were living in a small town in Illinois, and I started doing lessons for youth out in that area at a facility. And that afforded me the opportunity to be introduced to a gentleman named Aaron Earlywine, who was the head coach for the softball program at the University of Missouri. He's a former baseball player, had played on the USA men's national team for fast pitch, and we ended up having a lot of similarities. So connected with him, and it just so happened that Beverly Smith, who's the head coach now at the University of South Carolina for the softball program, knew Aaron well, and she was currently, at that time, she was at North Carolina as an associate head coach where she played. Either way, she was taking over the program here at Carolina and was tasked with bringing it back to the prominence that it's experienced in, I guess, its 30-year history now,
Right.
maybe even more. And Aaron said, I think I have the guy for you. And that was me. And, Bev and I connected. I came down for an interview, was afforded the chance to speak with Ray Tanner, through that interview process. So that was another, moment that I remember when you run into people like that and you have 30 to 40 minutes with them by themselves, or just you and them, in a personal setting like that. It's pretty special. But she offered me the job, and then it was my job to go home and convince the family that we were going to move away from this, small network that was a very close network, and come out here to a new place and have new challenges as a family. So I was able to do that, and we came down to Columbia and have been here for 11 years since. But when I arrived, again, the resources that were available at that time to South Carolina softball were really the worst in the SEC. And it was on the front end of all the success with the football program and all the success with the athletic program. But we returned the program to prominence and a winning culture, and made regionals, I believe, in 2013 for the first time in a while. Also went through a new stadium build, and it was a great experience. It also allowed me to put my big boy pants on, and it was my first big boy job as well. So I was excited about that opportunity, and was afforded a great mentorship from Bev through that whole experience.
So that transition from a college athlete playing at the highest level, winning the World Series, which is like the pinnacle in college baseball, and then going on, being drafted, playing minor leagues, you're living the dream, right? But you're also, living this new dream of being a father,
Right.
and wrestling and trying to figure out how to make that work. Mm-hmm. And of course, my understanding is minor league players aren't exactly paid a tremendous amount of money.
No.
And
no.
So you're living with 5 guys.
Yeah.
You're bumping ankles with one of your roommates, one of your teammates,
Yeah.
and riding on buses that are far from reliable.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely.
And I've heard it's a real tough ride. But what was that like? I mean, to have to face ending, this career that you kind of dreamed of having, and then having to pivot. I mean, that is for a lot of people crushing. That adversity, they've put their identity into pursuing this sport, and when you realize, hey, this season of my life is coming to an end, and it's time for me to put my big boy pants on and find something new. Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. You're taking me back. For me, it was natural at the time because it was a reaction. It was something that had to be done. There wasn't a second thought about it, and I afford a lot of that mentality to my athletic background. You just do what you have to do when you need to do it, and it's moment to moment. And each at bat, if you will, of life is going to be a new at bat, and that's something that was instilled in me from my time at Texas, playing with Augie Garrido, who's a legendary coach and a mental Yoda of sorts.
Okay.
But it was interesting. It was scary. It was uncomfortable. I didn't know what anxiety was back then, but I would think that that's what I was feeling. So you have this pit in your stomach, but you have a belief in yourself that allows for you to push through the fear. And when you're able to do it, you get on the other side and you realize that everything that happened before that prepared you for that moment. And it turns into an opportunity that you can not necessarily take advantage of, but flourish in and bring value to. So it's scary, but it wasn't the first time I had faced something like that. And it wasn't the last time either, because the bigger scare was moving from that athletic identity that you spoke of into something that I had never been a part of or never really experienced, where I'm moving into more of a corporate setting, in a business setting. And that was more intimidating to me than going from playing minor league baseball to going to coaching. I knew coaching. I had great mentors and figures that I could look to in terms of background experience and pull from.
And you knew the game.
And I knew the game, right? So I felt like an expert in that sense. And I had an expertise on the track record that afforded people to listen to me, which made it easier too.
Yeah.
Even though college athletes are hard sometimes to get to listen. But the scarier part, most definitely, the scarier part was going into the corporate setting and having to start at the bottom and find your cornerstone there. That's something that kept me up at night for a long time. But you start getting little singles in terms of success, So I started with a company named Paychex and cut my teeth in their training program, and it was a sales position, and it was the minor leagues of sales, if you will. But they trained us well.
You're back on a new bus.
Back on a new bus, man. It seems to be the thing,
That's right.
But I looked at it with that baseball analogy of just small wins each day is going to keep us moving forward. And by the end of it, I had had some home runs and had found myself outside of athletics, and that was the biggest victory in all of it.
So you pretty much just took it inning for inning.
No doubt about it. Pitch for pitch.
Pitch for pitch,
No doubt about it, man. It's something that sticks with me all the time. And I don't think those nuances of the game ever get away from players who play. And whether it's snap to snap or serve to serve or whatever that verbiage is, I think that background experience for young people, and even as you move into the latter portions of your life, are important and set the cornerstone for yourself.
We're all painting our own story or writing our own story.
Yep.
And none of us want to go through painful experiences. I mean, it's painful, right?
Yeah.
And but the reality is, you look at the most attractive stories that people can share, and they always have lots of adversity throughout the script.
Right.
And so, not that we want to invite adversity in, but it's going to come one way or the other. And especially for those who are really striving to do something great with their life. Freddie, you've got a few things that in your life that you could share, and one in particular happened a few years ago. Do you want to take just a minute and share a little bit of that story?
Let me just kind of roll back a little bit too. I know I don't look athletic like Calvin, but I was also a baseball player. I was a non-looking athletic baseball player. I pitched, and so I learned from an early age that there's a lot of responsibility as a pitcher. You pretty much set the tone of the game, right? And just like Calvin used the analogy for strikes, and each at bat, each pitch is an opportunity. And there's an outcome for every pitch that you make, whether that's a ball, a strike, whether Calvin's up and hits a home run off of me, or whatever that is. So you got to keep that in mind as you go. A lot of times I think we forget about the adversities we go through because we get caught up in our day-to-day life, whether we're focused internally or externally. So, but a few years ago, I had in my mind, I had a heart issue. If you listen to some people, I had multiple heart attacks. And I guess to that point, during that day that I went to the hospital, I did have multiples and ended up having a double bypass. So, and that was in April, actually April the 26th, 2 years ago. So that's a day that kind of sticks in my head. And so I think the adversities that I went through, like, I played a year of junior college baseball. That's official, right? in reality, I was the video guy and the bullpen pitcher, for practices.
Two of the most important guys.
Yeah. So, but I was on the team and I was still living my dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so,
But you were an ace on your high school team.
oh yeah, I was the man.
Yeah, it's hard to make that transition, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you realize that there's people better than you, and even with the amount of hard work you put in, there's still limitations to what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
So, I look back, I didn't handle that adversity very well. And so for me, every time I do something, I try to look and see the opportunities that I was afforded, and I call them opportunities, to sit there and do better the next time. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of where I was at. Most people would have freaked out. I was just, I was at a doctor's office and they did an EKG and they said, "You're fine." And I said, "No, I'm not." So they took me to the hospital and they told me I'm not. So there we go.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. And that was an incredible event. And we're so thankful you're still with us.
Right.
And I remember that like it was yesterday. Yep. And also remember the journey after that and how really, how much I admired the way that you really just kind of tackled that and didn't let it defeat you.
Right.
So to share a little bit more about that, if you would.
Yeah. So the interesting story was for that in my mind is that I don't remember being scared at all, but I remember wondering how are you going to get through this? And I had several people come and visit me. I had several friends that I had played sports with and done things with, and for me, that was very important. And the calmness that I felt during all of that. You go down and you have your heart catheterization and the guy goes, "Hey, I met you a couple weeks ago." Right? So that was kind of weird. And, when I wake back up from that, he says, "I got good news and bad news. The bad news is you have a 99% blockage. The great news is you're first on the table in the morning." So, always look for the positive, right? And so, the surgery obviously went well. And, I ended up spending a month with my parents at their house, recuperating and recovering. And that had an adversity itself. Sure. I love my parents, but they have their little, idiosyncrasies in their age that they want to do, and so it was interesting. And then coming back and starting rehab, and then moving to Columbia full time, and just continuing to work. Because I knew that you just can't sit there. You have to move forward and get going. And the other aspect that you look at is that you were put in that position for a reason. You faced that adversity for a reason. And if you can sit there and mentally say, I'm still here, what can I do to help somebody else down the road? That's the kind of attitude I took. And it was, for me, it was instrumental because, you sit back and you go, wow, you're 49 years old and you have a heart attack and a double bypass. Everybody goes, "Oh, you're young for that." Well, that happens to a lot of people. It's not just me. But I think from the adversity that I had, playing sports in my youth and being in the sales field with every day knocking on doors, making phone calls, not every day people love to see you.
No.
Right? I mean, it's not every phone call that you're going to get an appointment.
Not at all.
It's not every appointment that you're going to get a sell. Mm-hmm. And you kind of sit back and you kind of learn from that. And the sad part about a lot of businesses today is that they've not really paid attention to the adversity that they've had,
right?
Whether that's in their own personal life or whether it's in the business world, because we are so busy doing the job every day.
That's right.
People don't focus on that. So I think that that's been a benefit for us, being able in what we do to help people grow their business, but also personally to help our people grow and come up in times of adversity that they're going to face.
That's a great point, Freddie. That experience is not necessarily the best, teacher. Right. It's reflecting experience. Right. When you stop and reflect on what you've gone through, yep, you're able to really begin to unpack all the lessons that you can take from that, and then begin to apply those. And that's the key. You got to apply it. Yep. Just because you learn something doesn't mean that you activate it. So you've got to actually take what you learn and use that to your advantage. And that's what adversity does. I mean, without those obstacles, you don't really have, a real understanding of what it looks like to face difficult times. And so
That's right.
when you face those, not enjoyable,
Yep.
but there's a great lesson that can be learned, and or we can let it crush us and get depressed and,
Exactly.
and give up on whatever dream we're chasing and settle for less in life.
Great teacher, but a poor master, right?
Yep.
Absolutely,
That's right.
Poor master.
absolutely. And so, Calvin, I know that in the past year you also faced another level of adversity in healthcare specifically. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback Freddie's experience, it's interesting listening to that full in terms of a full story. I didn't have that background before, but now I understand why he was my guardian angel, if you will, that day. But I had a personal health scare at a young age this year that was out of the blue, and was the first one that I had ever experienced in my life. I had never had surgery up to that point besides a tonsil surgery with ice cream afterwards. I
Right.
didn't even remember it. So was very blessed in terms of health throughout most of my year, and obviously playing career as well. But came in here actually last June for a meeting to speak with Freddie, because we stay in contact consistently, and ended up finding myself experiencing some pain. I mean, you were there that day. We ended
That's
up
right.
talking about cracking our necks and everything.
Yeah.
So I was moving most of the time because I just kept feeling this uncomfort in my abdomen and midsection. And before you knew it, the meeting was over, and I guess it was time for the episode to happen. But had a shooting pain that went down my left arm, and I really thought I was having a stroke. My whole left side went numb.
Full disclosure, so did we.
I believe you probably, yes. I could only imagine.
We were worried for you. For
I could
sure.
only imagine, and I remember looking to Freddie, and that calmness you spoke about is a blessing of yours, because I felt that calmness from you, and I believe that you were supposed to be there that day, man. But ended up laying on the floor for about an hour and a half fighting Freddie, because he wanted to get me out of here in an ambulance, and I said, no, I'm going to walk out of here, thinking it was just a spasm of sorts.
Right.
But sure enough, about 2 hours later, I was out of here in an ambulance and heading to the hospital for an MRI and testing. And it ended up being my C4 was pushing into my spinal cord, and I needed or required emergency surgery. So within an 8-hour period on June 26th last year, I was on the table and going under and scared out of my mind.
Is that your first surgery that you've had to encounter?
Yes, in my adult life, yes. And
Yeah.
even in my teens and everything, I never had anything where I was going under, and didn't know what was going to come from it. And especially something that was a surprise. So ended up going through recovery and still in recovery, but for about 3 to 6 months, and had surgery where they put a plate from C4 down to C6. Feel a lot better now, but the journey back is really what I held on to. And I think through that journey of rehab and facing the adversity of learning how to walk again, learning how to feel feel touch in my fingertips and how to grab things and even write my name. I remember the first day I came out of surgery, athletic background, motivated to get back, people saying, you're so lucky, you don't know, you have no clue how lucky you are. And you sitting there like, no, I really don't. I really don't know how lucky I am, but I do know what I'm made of, and I know what is still in front of me in life. And I know I have 2 boys that I want to play catch with, and I want to coach, and I want to run, and I want to ride bikes. You think about all the things you take for granted each day, and then that passion fueled by that turns into hope, turns into motivation, and turns into a resilience that allows for you to come through the other side. And I think the balance through it all is really recognizing your blessings while going through some of the toughest times of your life brings you to a center, but also the ability to sit back and take some time away from the rat race that life can be at times gives you a perspective on what you truly value in life, what your purpose is, what you would like to pursue with the platform that you're provided, and how lucky you are to have one. And coming out of that surgery, I felt like another layer of my being was in place. And I felt like I finally came out of it with some of my immaturities, released, and the ability to really see myself and have self-awareness for not only capabilities, but also what my mission on this earth is and purpose on this earth is. But it's humbling. And it was a humbling experience. And I was lucky to have people like you there that day. And it truly is a full circle feeling, being back in the office and walking in is especially exciting. So it was definitely a life-changing event.
How long were you in the hospital?
I was in the hospital for approximately almost 2 weeks. And I think it was because COVID was going on and also coincided with the 4th of July. So my release there was a little bit longer, but then I ended up going to an acute rehab center for a week up in Charlotte after that. And that's where I really started working hard on getting my footing, getting my balance, being able to improve my gait and walking at a normal pace again, and also doing things like going up the stairs and, being able to move things with your fingers and write your name and all that kind of stuff. So it was an experience for sure.
So I'm sure you learned a lot about how the body works,
yes,
even more so than you did in your athletic background. But it's amazing that you'd have to go through and relearn how to walk and relearn how to do some of these things.
Yeah, it's interesting to say out loud sometimes, to be honest. And now being in a position where I can jog, in intervals is it's an adventure, man. Literally running is an adventure to me now. It's like the first time you get to throw a baseball, or the first time you hit one, or the first time you go on a jet ski ride, man. It feels like that each and every day when you find the strength in certain things. So
that is really incredible. That's what an interesting story and one that many people face. Hey, you said something a few minutes ago, Calvin, that I wanted to just rewind a little bit and talk about. One of those things is why. The why you kept in front of you. You talked about your boys and some of the things that you wanted to accomplish. When people are facing adversity, really keeping your purpose, your why in front of you is so important to motivating you and keeping you from just sliding and giving up. Can you talk a little bit more about that, unpack that why for us?
Definitely. That experience helped me truly find my why. I think outside of my boys, it's easy when you have children to have a purpose in life and to get up out of bed wanting to do everything you can to put them in the best position possible in life. But your personal journey of getting out of bed and the filling of your passion bucket, or the ROI on the time that you spend with people and on people and in the world each day, is something that I think is harder to find, and people find at different points in life. And sometimes it changes. And for me, coming out of that experience, my why really shifted towards how can I make an impact in my community on a daily basis? How can I connect good people with good people and bring them together, not for my own selfish purposes, but for the reasoning of them being able to do something great together? And I found that through really a story or an experience while I was in the hospital. So I was at Prisma, and I was on the 4th floor, I believe, and directly out across from me was Segra Park. And it was kind of ironic because you have this minor league baseball stadium sitting over there.
Right. You're
sitting in the bed, you have to use a walker to get out, and the mobility and everything is challenging. But I also think it was supposed to be there because it was a driving force in terms of you can get back to doing all those things if you keep your mind set, not only on your why in terms of your boys, but also just stay resilient. And there were days that I didn't think it was going to happen, but that driving force and that grit behind it mixed with some grace, and the next thing you know, we found ourselves in a good spot. But while I was looking out there, it just so happened that it coincided with the 4th of July that I was in the hospital. And selfishly, I was saying, man, I hope I get to see some fireworks.
Right.
That would be cool because I was going to be in the hospital through the holiday. So I looked online and saw that the Fireflies were supposed to be having their fireworks show for 4th of July and was excited about that. Kept up with it, was looking to see what the time was going to be. And then just so happened that Mayor Benjamin shut down most of the fireworks shows around the around the city because there had been a spike in COVID. So I was disappointed for myself and feeling a little selfish at the time, loathing. But then an idea came to me out of nowhere, and an inspiration came, a why, if you will. And it was to figure out how we could put on a fireworks show for the Children's Hospital, and also for the workers who were involved, not only in my recovery, but throughout all of the hospital in general. I saw that, and I saw what they went through on a daily basis, and their why and their purpose through all of the adversity they faced and have faced, and that's something that also drove me. Right. That being said, it was a fun experience to see us turn around in 24 hours a 15 to 20 minute fireworks show for the Children's Hospital. And when I tell you it took a tribe and that no man is an island, it went all the way from my former player, Evan Childs, who now has a successful apparel business and fitness business down in Florida, being one of the #1 donors, for the efforts, all the way to Brad Shank, who's the VP over at the Fireflies,
very well.
all the way to fire marshals for the state, city fire marshals, and really the last person that made it happen was Robert Berry. So Robert Berry is a former player for the USC baseball team. He was a catcher. He also was our bullpen catcher for the softball team when he was finishing up. And I hadn't spoke to Robert in a while, but I knew that he had worked himself up in the local police department. And I figured he might know somebody at the city office to be able to help us get that last permit, because it came down to us having to get the city permit. We know that sometimes holidays around the city can be challenging in reaching people. So there was a sweet woman's voicemail I kept reaching, and I felt like I was not going to get any any traction there. I even was able to obtain Mayor Benjamin's cell phone number through a contact of mine. Called him once, called him twice, wasn't going to blow him up, but I was going to do this anyway, anyhow. Didn't matter who I had to get a hold of. But I ended up sliding into Robert Berry's DMs on Instagram, if you will, trying to keep up with the lingo. And he got back to me immediately and said that he had the contact. And sure enough, in the final hour, as the nurses are getting the kids, separated accordingly for COVID, distancing purposes with taped lines and everything else, we get the permit, and Brad and I are on the phone coordinating, directly across from one another, because they had to relocate their fireworks to be able to show it on the side of the Children's Hospital. And it was like, all right, now, nope, 10 minutes, just give me 5 minutes more. And we're just waiting and waiting. And before you knew it, that first one went off, man. And I remember standing in my room and looking at it through this little window. And it was a moment to myself. And I said, we did it. We freaking did it. And I will never forget that moment. Ever.
It's amazing.
Nobody really knew about it besides those who were involved, but I tell you, the kids who experienced it definitely remembered it. And it was something that was provided to me in terms of remembrance when I was discharged from the hospital, because they came and gave me an envelope of construction paper thank you notes from the children, and there were some more formal notes from the nurses, and I read those one at a time every day I was up in Charlotte at the acute rehab center, and that was another driving force. But the why that came from that was the ability to utilize our platform and our great network here in Columbia and across the nation to do things that are bigger than ourselves and impact more people than we could ever imagine. And coming out of that, my why has definitely shifted to that focus, and it's something that I look to utilize, but it's also something that is a part of my everyday conversation, regardless of if it's business, friendship, or parenting. So that's how that kind of turned into my why.
So you took this this situation that many people would be down and out, depressed. What's my future look like? Right. Am I going to be able to go back to work? Yeah. Am I going to lose my income?
Yeah.
Am I going to lose my job, my career? And instead, you shifted your focus toward people who maybe their situation was not as favorable as yours was in that moment. And especially for children who have their entire life hopefully ahead of them. And you just found a way to really make sure you brought them a little bit of joy at a holiday that generally is centered around things like fireworks. Yep. And these kids were in an environment outside of their home. They can't enjoy it. And you want to make sure that the show went on.
No doubt.
In spite of all of the adversity that the city had faced in our community and our country and our world with COVID. That's awesome, man. So you really took that situation, you turned that pain into a gain, not for you directly, for our community. Thank you for doing that. That's awesome. And I'm sure that inspired you and helped you continue to just press forward. And that's why you're here, ready to accomplish some more things.
No question.
And so talk a little bit about what you have on the horizon. I believe there might be a race in your future.
Yes.
Is that right?
Chase the Rainbow is a 5K in Greenville that's on March 14th. And don't quote me on the exact name, but I know it's March 14th.
Right.
So when I was speaking to, running being an adventure in terms of how I feel about running. I was never a runner. I was a sprinter. So long distance was not my friend. I run on the balls of my feet, so my lower back after a mile was never great. So either way, that is a big goal for me to achieve in March, and is something that I'm going to be doing with my girlfriend, and have put it out there and put it on the calendar, so have committed to it. And even some of my coworkers may join me if they can make it. So I'm excited to accomplish that.
That's awesome. That's awesome to go through what you've been through in the past year, less than a year, to plan and set a date and say, hey, I'm going to accomplish this race and prove it to myself and hopefully inspire many others who may go through some of the things that you've experienced. Hey, Calvin, do you have any advice that you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap up today?
Sure. And one more thing I'll say is that fireworks show will happen again. That's another goal for us this year. I want to share a favorite quote of mine from my head coach, my former head coach, Augie Garrido. And he used to say this to us all the time. He would say that confidence and hope are a weaker emotion than fear. And fear is something that is natural in humans. It's primal in ways in terms of survival. So you wake up with it every single day, whether you're in the jungle or you're in your king-size bed. That being said, confidence and hope and motivation and resilience are not always there for you each and every day. And being able to wake up each morning and fight for that is something that is important. And it's something that you have to do to be able to achieve the goals that are in front of you. But it's also something that you have to remind yourself to do on those days that really you don't feel like doing anything. So I would just be understanding that, again, fear is a stronger emotion, but confidence is one that can erase that fear as long as you're practicing it each and every day. And it does take practice, pitch by pitch, AB by AB, to be able to eventually get to where that's a consistency for you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And fear it's a tremendous emotion, and it drives so much of our behavior. Right. But we can't let it own us.
Never.
It can motivate us, though.
That's right.
Hey, thanks again for joining us today, Calvin.
Definitely.
Really appreciate
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Hey, and thanks for joining us on The Brainstorm with Matt and Mike. We'll see you next time.